Welcome to Hot Off the Press.
Welcome to Hot Off the Press. We don't kink shame.
Oh. Welcome to Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and the authors that bring them to you. Before we start, let's go around the room, have everyone introduce themselves. And I'll go ahead and start with you, Rachel.
Hi, I am Rachel Carr, but I write under R.E. Carr because Rachel Carr wrote vegan cookbooks in the 70s and I'm not her. I also occasionally write with a guy known as Rick Gaultieri, who may or may not be here tonight. And I am an author of a couple urban fantasy series, some sci-fi, and whatever weird stuff comes out of my brain at any given moment. You can find me at www.rachelecarr.com or on pretty much every social media as Total Recar.
All right, Rick.
My name is Rick Gaultieri, and I write as Rick Gaultieri because the concept of coming up with an easy-to-spell pen name was too difficult for me. I write primarily horror comedy, urban fantasy, and let it be known I also have a pen name who might write slightly more risque stuff, which we won't talk about tonight, unless you ask.
All right, Chris.
Chris A. Jackson. I have been writing an embarrassingly long time. I do science fiction, fantasy, a little horror. I wrote some Arkham horror. I do a lot of tie-in stuff. I'm breaking into science fiction now, and I have just wrapping up a techno thriller science-y series with Falstaff Books about dragons in Boston. So a little bit of everything. That's me. Oh, Chris A. Jackson, because Chris Jackson is just way too common, and I'm uncommon.
All right, Deb.
Hey, I'm Deb Marlowe. I write historical romance set in the Regency period, so kind of Jane Austen-y, but with sexy times. And I have a book out this week, very excited. It's called Why Do Earls Fall in Love? I'm also super excited because one of my books was announced as a finalist in the Maggie Award of Excellence this week. Yay! Judged by librarians and booksellers. So yay! Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Finally, Joshua.
Hey everybody, my name is Joshua Palmatier. I am an epic fantasy writer with Daw Books and Bane. And I have like 3 trilogies out at the moment. You can find them under Joshua Palmatier. I also started a small press called Zombies Need Brains, and we produce science fiction and fantasy themed anthologies, which is what I'm here to talk about tonight. You can find me at joshuapalmatier.com and the small press under zombiesneedbrains.com.
All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and get into the new releases. And I'll start with you, Rick. Tell us about the books you have coming out and the idea that, where the idea came from for either the book or series.
Well, I have 2 coming out over the next couple of days. The first is co-written by somebody. Their name escapes me at the moment, but it's called Half-Hearted Hunter, and it is book 3 in my False Icon series, which I have come up with all of the ideas and all of the best jokes for.
She's gonna throw something at you.
Yep.
Funnily enough, I see 2 names, 2 on these books in this wonderful series that you came up with all by yourself.
Well, I like to share credit,
Could you tell me where you found that idea?
I'm a nice person. I mean, I know you wrote this really long
28 page.
Yeah, which I didn't read,
Oh.
But anyway, Half-Hearted Hunter is book 3 in False Icons. It is a comedic coming of age, new adult urban fantasy series. In addition to that, I have the audiobook for Bigfoot Hunters, which is the first in my Crypto Hunter series coming out on August 3rd. And that is getting away from the whole YA and fantasy thing. That is pure on bloody arms ripped off by angry Sasquatch's horror.
Where'd the idea come for that?
That's angry Sasquatches, not amorous ones. So it's not like horror or romance, right?
No, he leaves that to me, the amorous Sasquatch.
Okay, good, good.
So where did the idea come from for that?
For Bigfoot Hunters.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bigfoot Hunters basically started life as a movie script. I'm a big fan of, like, crappy horror movies, like, and I was making my way through Amazon and like other places, all of the, like, just horrific Bigfoot horror that was there, and it was just so bad. I was like, something, I can do better than this. So that was my conceit. I can do better than these professional filmmakers. Obviously I couldn't, because I don't know how to make movies, but instead I want to turn it into a novel, and well, people seem to kind of like it. So if it ever becomes a film, hopefully it doesn't embarrass me and is not horrible.
All right. Chris.
Okay, I actually had one novel come out about a month ago. This is my fantasy series, The Blood Sea Tales, is book 4, Ashwalker. And the next one after that is book 5, which will be Bloodwalker, and that one should be out by fall this year. The series starts out with 3 books that are very piratey and very kind of adulty, but not into the grimdark area. But I don't really pull any punches, as I have on a lot of my other novels. I've written a lot of tie-in stuff that pretty much had to hug on to the PG-13 era, but I kind of pulled the pin on these, so they're a bit grittier. The first book in the series is The Pirate Scourge, Scourge as in 9-tailed whip. The second one is the Pirate's Truth, and the third one is the Pirate's Bane. And the impetus for this book, Ashwalker, was a secondary character, and this often happens in my books. There's always a secondary or tertiary character that's screaming at me throughout, saying, me, 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 this is my story. You really need to come over here and tell my story. And so I did. And the primary character is a necromancer, Hashi Severin, and that does not mean she's a bad person. So that is going to be 3 more books in that arc, and who knows where it's going to go from there. The most recent release, I had 2 books released within a week. One is through my new publisher, Shadow Valley Press. It is Pacifica, and it is kind of a very different kind of science fiction. This is set, it's not really time fiction, although it's not my universe. I'm writing in another man's universe. DJ Bowden created the universe, the Fivefold universe, and I got to write a science fiction sailing novel. So if you know me, you know I write sailing books. I've been on the ocean almost my entire life. So that part of it is definitely authentic. The spaceship part, I defer to DJ for that, because he created the universe. So, but it's a circumnavigational race on a water world during hurricane season. So, and of course, somebody's trying to kill the guy. So, a lot going on there. And there may be as many as 6 books in that series following the same character. The second one, called Stratos, which takes place in the atmosphere of a gas giant, is in the works right now. The next release I had was the 3rd book in a series of techno thrillers, sciencey techno thrillers that I wrote with, Falstaff, me and names don't get along. And that is Dragon Legacy, 3rd book in the series of Dragon Dreams, Dragon Nemesis, The Dragons of Boston. It's not urban fantasy like it kind of sounds, but it's more genetic techno thriller. What happens when somebody digs something up that has a latent RNA virus in it, that once it gets into your bloodstream, it kind of makes you into something else. So those are my quick releases. And yeah, I've never had 2 books come out within the same week before, but yay.
All right. Deb, how about you?
I have a new book out in my, it's called A Series of Unconventional Courtships. And the new book is the 5th book in the series. It's called Why Do Earls Fall in Love? It's a marriage of convenience story. Almost all of my books have a mystery element or some kind of adventure element. And this one involves historical jewels, which was so much fun to research. Yeah, there's some really amazing jewelry out there. So that was a lot of fun. The whole series is about a group of Regency guys who have really horrible past family situations, and they've kind of bonded together, and they really only trust each other. But you know, it's a romance, so love has to come and hit them on the head, and then they have to find out how much they're going to enjoy it. So I really have loved this series. It's been a lot of fun to write. I'm kind of sad to leave these guys behind because they're, you know, really like a family, but I'm excited about my next series too, though. So you can check it out on my website at debmarlowe.com. Oh, sorry, what'd you say?
Are they a hot family?
They are they're a hot bonded family. Yes, they are. As it, you know, that's the one thing I love about romance, although, you know, people kind of mock it sometimes, and it is true, the guys are hot and the girls are pretty, but they all have, at least in good romance, you know, they're flawed, their characters are flawed, and the things that I love is that in order for them to get their happily ever after, they really have to face that and deal with their demons. So one of the things I love about romance.
You would love the pirate story, the first in the Bloodsea Tales, Pirate's Scourge. Definitely romance. It's
awesome.
Yeah, I'll send you a copy for sure. You'll get a kick out of it because it's very much like that. Deeply flawed, damaged characters, and you know, all their broken pieces kind of go together and click. So
yes, that's the wish, right? To find the person who fits your puzzle piece, right?
Right. That never really happens.
I love pirates.
I'm just drooling over pirates here.
I know. I live in North Carolina, so we have a strong pirate tradition here. So, you know, I love pirates. I would love to write a historical pirate, you know, series sometime.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Joshua, how about your book, or books, I should say?
Yeah. People that have been following Zombies Need Brains for the last few years know that we're going to have 3 every year, at least at this point. So yes, these are the new releases this year for Zombies Need Brains, the small press that I run. Hopefully everybody knows that we basically get the funding from all of these anthologies from Kickstarters. And so these are the ones that were funded last year by the Kickstarter last year. So I have to thank all of the Kickstarter backers from last year. They're in the back of the book if you end up getting any of these. Okay, so like I said, we funded 3 themed anthologies. So the first theme was, well, the title of the book was The Modern Deity's Guide to Surviving Humanity. And so the idea was we wanted stories about how gods are fitting into our modern world today. So things like, you know, here's some of the stories in here, like Hera is a marriage counselor. The Aztec god of gaming is running a gaming company. Something like that. How are they fitting into our actual modern society? So that's The Modern Deity's Guide to Surviving Humanity. Okay, our second anthology that was funded is called Derelict, and the title pretty much explains what the stories are all about. They're all about abandoned ships, and we were looking for a good mix of abandoned spaceships, you know, like a la alien movie kind of thing. And we also wanted abandoned like ghost ships, sailing ships. So we got, most of them are sci-fi in here, but we do have a mix of like 3 or 4 of them that are sailing ships. And even a couple that are sort of fantasy oriented or steampunk oriented. So I think there's a good mix of derelicts in this anthology. Okay, so that's Derelict. Okay, and the third anthology that we funded last year is called When Worlds Collide. This one's a little more complicated in the theme. The idea for the theme here was we wanted stories where two differing cultures collided. So it's kind of like culture clashes kind of thing. So it was a little harder to get a handle on good stories for that one, pulling them from the slush pile and all that kind of stuff. But I think we ended up with a nicely well-rounded anthology. If you've read any of our zombies anthologies, you know we like wide varieties. So, you know, in all of these anthologies, we've got like humorous stories and really dark stories and, you know, basically things all over the spectrum in terms of style and atmosphere and all that kind of stuff. So those are the three anthologies that we funded last year, all out now. You can get them in ebook, trade paperback, and if you miss the Kickstarter, you can still get Kickstarter editions. We did limited printing of the Kickstarter editions. Just if you need the Kickstarter editions, you have to go to the Zombies Need Brains online store for those. Okay, but the ebooks and the trade paperbacks you can get pretty much through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all that kind of stuff. Okay, the usual haunts. Okay, and what that means now that these are out is that we're ready for our next Kickstarter. So the plan is to start the next Kickstarter on August 11th, so just a couple weeks away. We have 3 new themes. If you're not familiar with Zombies Need Brains, we fill half of the anthology with like published names that you probably recognize, you know, some of our past anchor authors, that's what we call these people, are like Faith Hunter, Shauna McGuire, David B. Coe. So some published names that fill out half of each of the anthologies. And then the other half we get from an open call for submissions. So if anybody's interested in the upcoming themes, then, you know, right up, if we get funded, we got to get funded first. But once we're funded, we'll start the open call. And then you can send in your stories and, you know, maybe you'll be in one of our anthologies. So the 3 new themes this year, the first one is called Noir, and it's supposed to be science fiction and fantasy, sort of detective, private eye, noirish stories. Okay, so I think that one's pretty straightforward. Again, we're looking for a nice variety here, so we don't want them all to be sci-fi or all to be fantasy. We want a good mix. Okay, so, you know, start brainstorming for that. Our second anthology is called Shattering the Glass Slipper, and it's supposed to be fairy tales that have been upended, turned around, gender bent, set in the future, you know, playing around with fairy tales, basically, and giving them a much more modern twist. The editors for that one specifically have in their little description that they are looking for some science fiction-y stories for that one. So, so keep that in mind if you decide you want to write for that one. And then the third one is called Brave New Worlds. And the theme for that one is basically any story that's along the path of us reaching for the stars. So, you know, a story set when we're leaving Earth, a story set on the travel to another system or another planet or something like that. So like, you know, a generations ship, or everybody's, you know, in cryo sleep or something like that, and something happens, or any story when we reach the new planet and, you know, or do we have to terraform it? Do we find life there? What happens when we run into, you know, something unexpected on the planet? Whatever. Okay, so any story set anywhere along that path. And if you can get a story that covers the whole path, all in, you know, 6,000, 7,500 words or whatever, I'll be impressed. Good story, though, not just a story. So those are the 3 new themes. So keep watch for our Kickstarter starting August 11th. And just so everybody knows, we're considered a professional press by SIFWA, so we pay professional rates and all that kind of stuff too. So so hopefully you watch for the Kickstarter and back us once we get started.
All right, perfect. Rachel.
Well, as you may have heard, there's a book called Half-Hearted Hunter coming out this week that I wrote and came up for the idea for, and wrote with some guy with an Italian last name that I can't remember. Which, if he had actually come up with the idea, would know that it is actually an urban fantasy retelling of that 2000s comedy classic, The Hangover. So, maybe if he had come up with that idea, he would know how to describe it. Just saying. No, it is a really fun series, and I do like working with this Rick guy. We do a lot of back and forth, and if you can't tell, it is comedy, but it's not like ha ha ha. It's more like black comedy. So that's book number 1 coming out, and it's a lot of fun. And then, just to be as silly as possible, I asked to have a book birthday on my birthday. So on the very 1st of August, I am writing a sequel to my Shingles book, Girl, aka Guy in Real Life, which is called Girl 2, The Author Needed More Money. As you can tell, this is an incredibly serious work of fiction talking about exploitation in the video game market. Who am I kidding? It's lit RPG parody because I played way too many video games and I have a lot of fun. I wouldn't say mocking lit RPG, but then I would be lying. I'm totally mocking lit RPG in good fun. And every trope you've seen in every anime and video game, I like to completely play with and have what if these people who actually are just like real gamers are in a game and do things like grind to avoid all the danger and, hack the system and use mods and everything that people really do to make the experiences as easy as possible. And there's a tentacle, an emotional support tentacle.
Only one.
What does the tentacle do, Rachel?
Oh, what the tentacle does cannot be described because we are in a PG-13 environment, but let's just say it is more of the Japanese art form known as hentai. But his name is Tentacles, and he's very nice in his own way. Yes,
He sounds clingy to me.
He's a bit clingy. He's very invasive of people's privacy, if you know what I mean.
He also sounded Southern.
Well, that's because when I get really tired, my real accent comes out. I am actually from Memphis, Tennessee, even though I hide out in Massachusetts now. So you will find that I will get progressively more Southern as this night continues.
All right, so my next question, I'll go ahead and start with you, Chris. What's something about being a published author that surprised you?
No two editors are alike. I have had, I don't want to count them, a lot of editors. Now, I will say that I have learned something from every editor I've had, something valuable. But I mean, and it's not that there's good editors and there's not so good editors, but it's what really kicks you is when like personalities and styles clash when you're working with an editor. Thankfully, that happens rarely. I've been blessed with some really wonderful editors, but the whole editorial process, like I said, when I was writing for Paizo, when I wrote the lit RPG novels for Paizo, go ahead, make fun of me. I was, really lucky, got a great editor. He taught me a ton of things. Prior to that, I had a series that came out with Dragon Moon Press, a small Canadian press, 4 books, 3 of them won national awards. And my editor for that series, Gabrielle Harbowy, just taught me so much. On and on with tie-in fiction and published stuff. Right now I'm working with Falstaff and with Shadow Alley Press, and things are going great. Melissa at Falstaff is a fantastic editor, and they do things wonderfully. They have John does the content edit, Melissa does the style edit, and then they have a strictly grammar down the pipe copy editor. So you get triple teamed, but it's one at a time. Just to give you a horror story, I've been triple teamed all at the same time. 3 content editors at the same time on the same copy, all marked up. And that's, you know, and that really wasn't the editor's fault. That was the house's fault. That's what they wanted to do. And I gotta tell you, that's hard on authors. Because, you know, you always, you know, pick your battles with editors, but when one editor is saying one thing and one editor is saying a different thing, it's kind of like, this is why I have no hair.
It's like being a little kid in a divorce, isn't it? It's like, please
Right?
stop yelling at me. What do you want me to do?
Stop this, please. You know, anyway, but you know, anybody who wants to get into non-self-published writing, you have to just kind of check your ego at the door and really pick your battles. You only confront an editor over things that really matter, things that are going to change the story, change the characters, or if something's in the setting that just does not work at all, you have to sit down and discuss it like adults, not scream and yell like 12-year-olds. So,
all right. Deb, what surprised you?
I think how awesome people are in publishing. I mean, just I don't know, you know, I'm the only romance writer here, but you know, romance writers rock. They're really awesome. You know, I write historical, and I just am amazed by how much people know and how willing they are to share. And, you know, it's a really great supportive community, which I really like. And the readers are awesome as well. You know, they're also supportive. One of my favorite things to do is there are a couple cons that are really focused on historical romance, and like that's like you know, I mean, I love all cons, you know, and you know, it's just so much fun. But when other people are geeking out what you geek out, you know, it's just really awesome. So I just, you know, I used to be a nurse, and that is a very, you know, we eat our young world. So going into publishing was, you know, quite a pleasant eye opener. So, and both tradition, you know, I've traditionally and indie pubbed, and I find they're equally as awesome on both sides. So that's been nice.
Joshua, what about you?
What I think I found most surprising is all the behind the scenes process. I mean, I don't think people, when they pick up the book and read the book, realize exactly how much goes on behind the scenes in order to get that book out onto the shelf. So, you know, there's, I think a lot of people think you just hand in the book and, you know, then your editor makes some changes and then that's it. Yeah, you know? And that's not, it's a lot more complicated than that. And so you don't realize how many people read the book and how many people you know, offer up suggestions and stuff. So, you know, there's you hand it in, and yes, your editor makes you do some revisions, or at least tries to get you to do some revisions. You know, but then after that, there's like the copy edit phase that Chris mentioned, you know, and there's a couple more people that look at it and offer suggestions, and then you've got the you know, cover art, and then page proofs, and then maybe you have galleys, and then arcs, and it's just all of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes to try to get the best possible book from you on the shelf. That's what surprised me the most, I think. I didn't think about it much when I sold my first novel. And then, of course, went through the process for the 12 books since then myself. But now I'm running a small press and I'm doing the whole process from the other side of the table. And so yeah, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than I think people realize.
All right.
It's interesting because I did just the opposite of that. I self-published first and made all the mistakes and then went to traditional publishing. So total flip-flop, but yeah, there's a lot involved.
Yeah, a lot.
All right,
It's
Rachel.
still amazing the typos get through. I mean,
Oh,
They
yeah.
are respect the typo that gets past 20 people. Like at that point, I had one that got in my first book and I decided to make it a location in my second one because if it's gonna make it through, it deserves it.
Yep.
It was
Exactly.
bust stop instead of bus stop. So there's a strip joint called that.
Oh God.
Oh,
there's
yeah.
So many bust stop.
Yes,
I
bust
just can't
stop.
go there.
But it made it past. It did get fixed. It got fixed on the day
Right.
of release. But because of that, I wrote a whole sequel based on a typo. So I guess what I've learned is that inspiration can come from anywhere.
Right.
I will say all the things you heard are true. Like it is so much more than you think it is. But I will say that the first thing you ever publish is the hardest. It's also the easiest because you don't know what you're doing. But I have found that before you have any credits, everyone looks at you like you're in this mass slush pile. And unless you really know someone or have a really big, reason for them to publish it, it is completely different after you publish a first book. And it doesn't even matter if it's huge or not, just getting it out there changes your life. And I don't judge because I said I have both self-published and I've been traditionally published and I've even been a hybrid. I was an Amazon contest winner of all things. And that's what started me off. So I have a completely, sort of skewed trajectory towards what most people have had. But man, it's just getting that first one. And you will find so many more doors open once you get started. So don't give up, just keep at it.
All right, Rick.
I think the thing I found most surprising is just how much you can affect other people's lives. I mean, the majority of my books can probably be described as, dumbass comedies. And I mean, I write those to entertain people. And, a lot of my interaction with people like, hey, I was listening to your audiobook and it was so funny. I almost crashed my car. And it's like, well, I'm sorry for killing you, dude. But then you'll get one and it's like, I was going through a horrible time. I lost somebody close to me and I read your book and it's pretty much the only thing that got me through that time. And it is the most humbling thing in the world because literally sending out to just tell a fun story, entertain. I'm not writing heavy dramas or I guess nonfiction accounts of life or so. So when you just hear stuff like that you've actually just had an effect on somebody's life, it really just hits you in a really good way. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, sometimes I'll get that, and I'm so used to responding to people in with just, once again, dumbass snark that sometimes I don't even know how to respond to that stuff because it's like, wow, yeah, it's so.
Thank you. You start with thank you for sharing. Remember, we talked about this.
Yes, thanks for that tip.
All right, perfect. So my next question, Deb, with this book, was there any part of the process that took you out of your comfort zone? And if so, how did it impact you as a writer?
Well, it was my first marriage of convenience, which is one of the big romance tropes. So, and I've never done it before. And it was more difficult than I thought it would be. Not the setup, that was kind of easy, but dealing with the aftermath of kind of being forced into a relationship with somebody. So I think, it made me think about things in a different way than I usually do with the relationship between this couple. It made me think about the relationships in my own life, and how it's much better to choose than to be forced, and how sometimes you choose not to have that relationship kind of a thing. So I would say that is the most surprising thing about this one. Although I almost always find some fascinating historical tidbit that I did not expect to find. I found the most interesting things digging through history for my book. So that happens every book. But that was specific. But the marriage of convenience thing was really specific to this one.
Joshua, anything that took you out of your comfort zone this time around?
I can't really say that anything that was specific just to this this set of anthologies. The biggest thing that we went into this being very aware of is that, like, for the modern deity one, we went into like reading the slush pile and reading the anchor author stories with this idea that, we got to be really, really careful that we're not doing something that's, culture appropriation or, anything that's like skirting any of those kind of controversial lines and stuff like that. And so that was a little touch and go, but I think most of the Zombies audience at this point knows that we're very, very careful with things like that. And so I think they trust us to make good choices when it comes to stories along those lines. And they also know what kind, like the Modern Deity is kind of a sequel to a previous anthology we did. It was called The Modern Phase, Guide to Surviving Humanity. And that one you're not going to get cultural appropriation so much as you would with the Modern Deity one. But we've done anthologies where we have to be careful about that. So that was kind of when we decided to do this anthology, we were aware and sensitive about that possibility when we were reading the slush pile and all that kind of stuff. So I think that was the trickiest thing that we had to do with these anthologies. I can't think of anything that took me out of my comfort zone in any of the other two. I mean, we occasionally read the story from the slush pile where we're just like, ooh, like, ooh, no, like, who went there? Like, that kind of thing. But
sorry.
That's not exactly. I don't think that's exactly what you're
feeling called out, Rachel.
It's usually me. I put kittens in a blender. What can I say? In fiction.
And I mean, if we want humor in every anthology, and so I don't know if that's necessarily something we'd cringe at, but we've had some that were very cringe-worthy stories. We're just like, okay, we're not touching this one, and set it aside with our pinky fingers and stuff. It was like,
sanitize.
Yeah, and sanitize immediately.
So I have a question for you. How you're doing the business side, the editor's side, how do you like writing rejection letters?
I thought about this long and hard when I started up the company, before we even did our first anthology. Because one of the things I didn't like from the writer's side of it was, I probably ran the whole gamut of rejection letters, from the obvious, this is a crude Xerox copy of the rejection letter that they just threw in an envelope and sent back, because I started when there were envelopes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Back when you really wanted the thin envelope and not the thick one where they sent your manuscript back, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever got one that was like on a third of a sheet of paper because they actually cut the sheet into 3 pieces because they've Xeroxed the rejection letters?
Yep.
That was my favorite.
With a big
one-line email. That's my favorite.
With a big no written on the third of the sheet of paper.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
And the one with the check boxes where they just kind of checked what they said was wrong in the story or why they didn't accept it. But anyway, to get back to the point, I
Sorry.
I decided that I would just create one rejection letter. Everybody would get the exact same letter, no matter what, and then that's so zombies. You either get the acceptance letter or you get this one specific rejection letter. And because I felt like if everybody knows they're getting the exact same thing, no matter what, then it had less of a sting. So that's my theory behind it, anyway.
So
I'm sure you're right.
I have to ask, is your rejection letter zombie themed? Is it like, sorry, our zombies aren't that hungry?
No, I didn't go for the humor with the rejection letter. It pretty much just says that, we enjoyed reading your story, and we didn't feel that it was a good fit for this anthology.
Ah, the corporate response.
The corporate response, exactly.
Yeah, the bland yet inoffensive.
Yes. Because we reject really, really good stories every single time, and for an anthology like this, it's simply because if we put that story in there, it would seem like it was the odd man out.
Right.
Like it didn't work with all of the rest of the other stories, and so. We always have a good chunk of stories where we really liked it, but it's just not going to fit with the tone and whatnot of the rest of the stories, and so we end up rejecting them. So, we've only got room for 15 to 20 stories. So, unfortunately,
that's a big anthology.
On all of our anthologies, then we'd have a lot more money and we could do bigger anthologies.
And how many submissions do you get typically? Just for an idea of the 15 to 20.
Yeah, and then you have to remember half of them are already filled up because we do the anchor authors. So yeah, people are fighting for like 7 to 10 spots in an anthology. And the smallest we've had is 150 submissions. And the largest we had was for Apocalyptic, and we had 850 submissions for that one. So it's the average, though, is probably right around the 450-ish range, somewhere in there, for most anthologies. So yeah, it's tough competition to get in one.
All right. So Rachel, anything that takes you out of your comfort zone?
Strangely, that's not a lot. I will say these trying times we've been in, I didn't think I could write anything for a while. And I had one of those rare, you ever had that rare like special moment where an idea just hits you and it clicks and it makes sense and it just gushes out of you? I wrote 150,000 words in 6 weeks.
Wow.
Pulling it. This is the draft. I wrote the entire first draft and then said, "Here, Rick, I have something for you."
Wow.
Surprise. All of this while working from home in these trying times and dealing with everything under the sun. And it was pure magic. Like, it was just one of those great moments. I've had like 2 of them in my life where a book just went, you know what? I'm coming out and you're not going to stop me. And it was beautiful. And then I had to wait a whole year because, of course, there's a whole lot to this process. And I had to actually let the other guy like get some opinions, maybe a little. Some few. But I think it really turned out well. It was one of those books that was a joy to write, and I hope that translates to it being a joy to read.
Rick, how about you? Comfort zone.
Sexy scenes. I put in sexy scenes.
Yay!
Pen name I mentioned. For the 2 that are coming out, I don't know if there was anything there that was really pulling me out of the comfort zone, but I had a release earlier this year. It was called The New Order, and it was basically a former witch and a former witch hunter who wound up getting married and then kind of get pulled back into the life. And at its core, even though there's like blood, guts, cursing, all sorts of things, at its core, it's essentially a romantic comedy about 2 people kind of working out their marriage. And
it was awesome.
Oh, thank you. And that kind of pulled me out because normally the root of my stories is really not romance. I mean, sometimes it is, but it's bad romance, as in like people who really shouldn't be together and stuff. This was kind of like, if you stripped out everything, it really just could have like, been like a Lifetime movie. But fortunately, it's not.
With about as much blood and crying, I won't lie. It was very Lifetime-like.
Yeah, I dropped too many F-bombs to make it onto Lifetime or the Hallmark Channel.
All right, Chris.
So I don't know which comfort zone you want me to describe, because I have three outlines here. But in both the Ashwalker and in the Dragons books, I deal with a lot of psychological issues. Asocialism, living lives in fear of personal relationships, things like that, and all the way up to full-blown psychoses. And that's kind of a hard thing to get right, and a ton of research and a ton of talking to people, and my own experiences as well, being crazy as a bed bug. But getting that on paper, when you're reading your own work and tears are streaming down your face, and it's not an emotional scene, but it's just how somebody's dealing with the fact that they have to get out of bed. Some days when you just don't want to see anyone or deal with anyone, and you have to get up and be an adult or a dragon in some cases. It's
That would make it easier to get out of bed.
Right. Yeah.
Unless the bed was
The whole
small.
wings thing, you just flap your wings and hey, you don't have to stand up. You just
I'm a dragon today.
right. But it was really vindicating with the Dragon's Legacy novel. I had a great copy editor, and you don't get a lot of feedback in general from copy editors, because they're just hammering you on punctuation and hyphens and
Commas.
and dashes, and don't get me started on commas. My theory on commas is you hold your whole book up, pages on the wall, and you shoot it with a shotgun, and that's where the commas go.
That's more scientific than my method.
But anyway, I had a wonderful copy editor, and she said, you're dead on accurate right here. This is what neurosis is like, or this is so terrible, when it really wasn't a terrible scene. It was just peeking into the idea of somebody having to decide their own therapy for a psychological issue. So been through it, but dealing with that and getting it on paper right, and then having somebody vindicate you by saying you did it right, really makes you feel good. But that's a hard thing to do.
All right. Before we wrap up, let's go around again, let everyone know where they can find you on the internet, also where to find your books. And I'll start with you, Joshua.
Like I said earlier, you can find my books at joshuapalmatier.com, or info about me there anyway. And the Zombies Need Brains books are at zombiesneedbrains.com. We are on Facebook. Facebook, look for Joshua B. Palmatier, and then Zombies Need Brains. And on Twitter as well, my Twitter handle is Ben Tate Author. Don't ask. My Zombies Need Brains Twitter handle is ZNBLLC. Okay, so ZNBLLC. And we also have a Patreon. So if you want to support the small press in some small way, besides purchasing the anthologies, just look for Zombies Need Brains on Patreon. The patrons there get like advanced knowledge about what the themes are going to be, new themes, and anchors and cover art. And basically, they get a sneak peek at everything. And then if you do Patreon high enough, then you can get like sneak peeks at like my stories and chapters from my books and things like that as well. So and I think that's pretty much about it for where to find us online.
All right, Rachel.
Okay, once again, I'm Rachel Carr, but I write under R.E. Carr because I don't write vegan cookbooks. You can find me on the internets at www.rachelecar.com or on pretty much every social media as Total Recar. You can also find me hanging out in that guy over there's group in Facebook. Which we will not name. Which we will not name because we are PG-13 tonight. But if you look for Rick Gaultieri books, you will find a Facebook group that Team TW, where both of us hang out a lot.
All right, Rick.
Well, as Rachel said, pretty much everywhere on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, I am Rick Gaultieri. Also at rickgaultieri.com. Nobody can really spell it right. So if you can't remember that, just go into Google and like search for either Bill the Vampire, The Tome of Bill, or Bill of the Dead.
Rick
one of those
Wall
series.
Works. I know because I can't spell your name either, and I'm on how many 5 books with you now? So
Good to know. Or you can just search out RE Carr and just follow links back to me.
That is true. It's shorter.
All right, Chris.
I like to make things easy, so I have a website, my own website, that all of my books are listed on, and connections to where you can find them and buy them and review them, etc. That website is jaxbooks.com. It's JAX Books. Pretty simple. I even have a vanity plate, Jax Books. So yes, I have no ego. It's all on my license plate. So go there. My new publisher is Shadow Alley Press for the Pacifica novel, and you can find their Facebook page under Fivefold Universe. And on Facebook, I just do Chris A. Jackson. If you just do Chris Jackson, you're going to get 100 hits and not me. And you'll see my smiling face if you get the right one. And on Twitter, I am Chris A. Jackson 1, the numeral 1. And drop by, have a read. We have a sign up for a newsletter on the website. So if you feel like getting notifications about 3 or 4 times a year when I have new stuff or a appearance coming up, feel free.
All right, perfect. And Deb.
www.debmarlowe.com, at Deb Marlowe at Twitter. Just if you search Deb Marlowe, you'll find me, or there is a voiceover artist named Deb Marlowe, which I always think I should get her to do one of my audiobooks because that would be really funny. But but I'm on the usual social media, and if you are already a fan of my books, then shoot me a message, and I can add you to my VIP reader group, which is private. So, but easy to find.
All right, perfect. I want to thank all of you and thank everyone for watching. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.